Hello, Steve. Welcome. This is an interview with Stephen Gilligan, and thank you for watching this. Stephen is going to be doing a training in London on the 7th to the 10th of November 2030 for NLP School. And the purpose of this interview is to find out a little bit more about this generative coaching program we're doing. So, I ask you any questions, Steve, about generative coaching. Let me firstly ask you a simple question. Who is Stephen Gilligan?
I've been asking that question for almost 50 years, Robbie. Hi, thank you for inviting me to this interview. And I guess in this context, I'd say I'm a psychologist in San Diego, California. Lived in California all my life, and really for the past 40 years, have been doing this intensive work on how to help people achieve transformational change. I started out my formal education in Santa Cruz, where you are right now, with the original NLP folks. I did my bachelor's in psychology, went over the hill to Palo Alto, did my doctorate in psychology at Stanford, and studied with not only Bandler Grinder, but Milton Erickson was probably my main teacher when I was younger. And that really got me on this that I think has been a continuous path to exploring how do you help people achieve these significant transformational changes in their life. I originally started in psychotherapy, but really have made this major shift towards coaching in the last probably 15 years or so, because I think it offers a more generative vehicle and a more accessible vehicle for people to explore transformational change. So I could say more about that, but I guess if people really want to know, they could go to my website, www.stephengilligan.com.
Thanks very much, Steve. So the next question, which I'd like to ask is, if I was going to do, let's say, sign up for your course of generative coaching, what would it do for me personally?
Well, the training has a twofold purpose. The first is to learn how to be able to help other people create these lasting transformational changes in their life. And we might say that that's the main focus of generative coaching. One of the significant dimensions of generative coaching that distinguishes it from, say, traditional coaching, if you would call it that, is we especially give emphasis on the performance state that somebody is in when they think, when they feel, when they decide something, and when they go to act in the world. And the principle might be that your state significantly determines your performance. Because that's the case, we also emphasize that in order for a coach to help a client, the coach has to be in a high performance state. The coach has to be in a state where they're not only very attuned to themselves, centered, if you will, open to a lot of creative possibilities, but they have to learn how to tune in, how to join, how to sort of hook up, if you will, in a creative relationship with the client. Because of that, to do generative coaching, you can't just learn a bag of techniques. You have to learn how to go into these generative states yourself. So the second major focus of the training is how to develop these states in yourself, how to make sure that you can be able to experience and perform the transformation within yourself, not only outside the session, but when you're working with somebody. So the purpose is twofold: personal change, personal development, personal transformation, one, and two, learning how to do the same with others in a professional context.
Great. So that leads on to the question: is would I have to be a coach to do this training?
Well, you don't have to, but that is the primary focus. This is a little piece of a more extended program that Robert Dilts and I have been developing over the last 10 years. Robert and I started at Santa Cruz, I never thought I'd say it, almost 40 years ago. And we have been developing this International Association for Generative Change. And the generative coaching work is sort of the centerpiece of it. So I think primarily we're interested in transformational change, but we're going to be talking about a model for how you can enter the state and then be able to help others enter that state and be able to make significant changes in that state. So it is, tilted towards learning professional change work at a personal level.
Okay, great. Perhaps you could give me an example, like a specific example of how you've used generative coaching, a generative coaching approach or technique with a client in the past, maybe like a little story or anecdote.
Well, that's a good question. Let me think. Well, there was first of all, maybe I should say it in this way. What we focus on in terms of the model is we focus on these 5 general steps. And the structure of the training will pursue these 5 general steps. The first step is developing a clear positive intention. This seems like a simple idea, and it is simple in principle. It can be quite challenging to help somebody make sure that they have a clear, resonant, succinct, positive goal in mind. So this is the first thing that is a challenge. I had a client who was a young fellow. He was in his early 30s. He was living with his mother. He was a cold caller for a telemarketing group. He hated his job, but he didn't see much else possible. He was very anxious. You might say that he was a little bit depressed. But he came in and he said, I really want to change my life. I want to get out of this rut. And so his goal, his positive goal, wasn't really developed very clearly. He knew what he didn't want, but he didn't know what he really did want. So for him, we do this work in terms of how to settle in, how to settle down, how to clear out all your mental clutter, and how to hold this question: what I most want to create in my life is. And we did this for a while with him, and he was surprised. He said, I want to create my own company. He says, I've got these ideas, but I've always felt I didn't have the confidence to be able to do it. He wanted to develop, he knew a lot about the internet. He wanted to develop this internet company on how to sell certain products. So that's the first step. The second step is develop the generative state or the creative state that is necessary and sufficient to be able to realize your dream. For him, he was up in his head a lot. He was into a lot of negative thinking. So the second step was how to help him to center, how to tune, how to quiet his internal dialogue, how to get this image of his positive future, a successful internet company, and then how to listen to what we call his creative consciousness in terms of ideas by which he could begin to do that. That's a big part of the generative coaching, and in the workshop we'll spend a lot of time on how do you develop a creative state, how do you subjectively measure it, how do you keep attuned to it. So this was the second step with this guy. Third step is take action. We all know that everything works in your fantasy, but nothing is real until you take action. We have 3 steps in 3 parts of this third general step in terms of what plans do you have, what actions do you take, and then with the inevitable finding that once you actually start to do it, it never turns out quite like you thought it would. How do you revise your plans? So for him, it was a sense of getting up off of his butt, getting out of his head, and beginning to take action. And he contacted some some friends that he had, some old university buddies who had some of the complementary skills. He began to generate this company, and he was working like 12, 14 hours a day with his team on developing this company. The fourth general step, so intention, develop the creative state, take action, and then fourth, transform the demons or the obstacles or the negative states that inevitably arise on the journey. We like to say that the more interesting a journey that you want, the bigger the demons will confront you on that path. So for him, he had a lot of people that didn't believe in him. He had a lot of internal voices that told him he'd never make it, so forth and so on. So we did a lot of work in terms of how to transform the negative states into positive resources. So here we really tap into the legacy of Aikido, which is the martial art I trained in for many, many years, about how to receive the energy of a problem and creatively engage with it in a way so it transforms into a positive resource. Of course, the legacy of the great psychiatrist, hypnotherapist Milton Erickson is also integral here, because that's really what I learned from him. So this guy, we'll call him Mark. Mark had to do a lot of work in terms of clearing out the dark spots, if you will, so that he could believe. He believed he could do it. He was committed to doing it. He was willing to take the action to do it. He was willing to be flexible and adjust his plans accordingly. This guy, amazingly, within, I think it was a 3-year period, his company was valued at $40 million.
Wow.
So it was really just absolutely amazing. And he's still doing a version of this. The fifth and final step is keep your creative practices going. And you know, we say that creativity is not a one-shot deal. It's not a technique that you do once. The great creative people, the high-performance people, the people that really achieve their dreams are people that engage in a lot of self-development practices every day, maybe 1 hour or 2 hours. So this is a really important part of the work that we do in terms of how to get a person's commitment to do that, find the practices that work for them so that allow them to keep growing, keep changing on that generative path.
Right.
So I hope that's not too long-winded.
No, it was a lovely kind of mix of the of a kind of story with the kind of 5 principles, which sound very interesting and powerful. So I suppose my next question would say, as you have this sort of 5-step sort of process of coaching, how would you say this is different to other coaching approaches?
Well, I think I think what Robert and I would say is that there are 2 pieces especially that would make generative coaching sort of coaching plus, if you will. The first is the strong emphasis we put on what constitutes a creative performance state, how to develop that in a person, how to help them have the tools to maintain it, because it's one thing to develop it, but once you start a challenging task, inevitably you'll lose it. So how to get back there. So here we do really, I think, an important blend of what we might call exterior and interior work. What Tim Galway, the writer, called it the inner game, if you will. And I think that this is beyond what traditional coaching does in terms of working with states of consciousness. The second major piece is we work actively and straightforwardly with a lot of the negative emotional states that really are the significant obstacles that compromise a person's performance and don't allow them to achieve their goals. You know, coaching, I think, unfortunately, it developed as a sort of the anti-therapy approach, or maybe that's too strong of a word, but we're not therapy. You know, it's sort of a second generation of change work. And the straw man they put up about therapy is that it's inner work, it's past oriented, it's explanation based, it's not action, it's a hierarchical relationship. And so therefore, to be the next step, we're going to be practical, future oriented, resource based, and let's talk about what you want and then talk about what action you can take. And for the most part, that's a significant improvement to that first generation of traditional therapy. But I find in a lot of ways that coaches are averse to dealing with negative states in a person. They say, oh, that's negative emotions, we don't go there. But I think if you put that limit on yourself, you're unfairly limiting the possibilities in the coaching. So we have ways of doing it that are not traditional therapy based. You know, it's not like tell me about your mother, or it's because, you know, some traumatic experience in childhood, but how to be able to start this conversation, if you will, within your mind body, so that anything that arises in the course of your creative journey, you could be able to positively connect with it and transform it. So I think those two aspects distinguish generative coaching, especially from traditional coaching.
Right. That's a very clear explanation. Thank you for that. My next question is, what underpins the philosophy of generative coaching? Is there some sort of, I don't know, general philosophical approach that you feel underpins the whole generative coaching approach?
Well, interesting question. I mean, you know, to me, the sort of the core idea, both theoretically and practically, is that everybody is on this creative journey of awakening in their life. You know, you could talk about Robbie Steinhouse and say, however many years ago, I won't force you to admit your age on camera. Let's say 30 years ago. Whenever Robbie was dropped into the strange family, you know, is that he's been on this great journey. And we see that sort of every day is that something in deep at the core of each person's being, it's looking to awaken into this creative journey. So when we interview people in generative coaching, we see this arc of unfolding. And so we think about what's your calling, or what's your mission, or what brings you the greatest excitement. And we emphasize that if people are not connected to that, or they're living away from that, they're very likely to do damage to themselves and to do damage to everything and everybody that they love and care for. And on the other hand, if they can take the time to tune into that and find the skills to be able to support that so that it can unfold in a real-time basis, then not only is that person's life much more happy, but they can make these great contributions to the world. So the work is really designed to support that in each person, each group, each company that we work with.
Great. Well, I can't say I have many more things to ask, so I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add, Steve.
No, just that I'm looking forward to coming to one of my favorite cities in the world, London, in November. And I'm looking forward to the 4-day event and hope to see a lot of people viewing our interview. Hope to see you there.
Yes, thanks very much again, Steve. And for anyone who wants to find further details, our website is www.nlpschool.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and thank you very much indeed, Steve.
Thank you, Robbie.